Interesting. And so Bigelow understands all this, or does these investigators they've gone down this route, or why did they what did they want to know from you? Like, why did they contact you?
They wanted to know how this was happening, where it was specifically, and really more. I don't think that they know what to do with the data. They know. Here's the deal. When you watch that interview with John Alexander, they said, "What did you learn?" And his own words were, "We've learned it's definitely in charge, and it's more complex than we ever thought." They don't know what the hell to do with this information. All they know is I am in contact with them, and I can tell you, still to this day, well, it's been, I don't know, maybe a couple, 8 or 9 months since the last time it's happened, but Gary Hernandez has sent people my way, like authors, telling them, I can't tell you because I've signed confidentiality agreements, and I don't want to disappear, but if you want to know, you should contact Michael Lee Hill. So I've been contacted by Skinwalker Ranch authors now, Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. I
was just going to ask, like, do you also talk to the New York Times? Did they figure this out, or what was their angle to this whole thing?
No. The New York Times, you know what, sometimes I am the mound builder's messenger here. I mean, I know it sounds crazy and sounds like something someone with delusions of grandeur or something would say, but truly I've been taken in by the Native American Indian elders who speak on behalf of the mound builders and the Iroquois, who mainly the mound builders intertwined into the Iroquois. And when I talked with the New York Times, which was just the beginning of January, the lady, man, I don't want to be disrespectful, but she's like, well, why do they contact you? And because they know I'm in contact with them. You're in contact with them. Who are they? I was like, well, they're known as the Anunnaki. She's like, the Anu what? Trying to laugh, like, what? Who? And I was like, oh God, I'm doomed. Maybe they picked the wrong messenger, because I'm just like, I've started to realize too, like, to me, I don't realize how much a learning curve a lot of this is for a lot of people.
Exactly.
I don't know really how to combat that. I'm like, I thought maybe I'll do some videos, do like 4 videos, and just pretty much say, from this point forward, I'm just going to talk like that you understand what I'm saying, not you personally, but if not, check out these videos. I'll give you the backstory on it. But here's the deal, though. The whole middle section of this that we've not even got into is I was given such a course of study by A.R. Gordon and the NSA on the Anunnaki, and the actual history that hasn't been told about it. And then I got what I've learned from the Anunnaki themselves on the history, what happened here, why things went down the way they did, and why things have escalated to the point that it is here now. But what I want to tell you is what people don't know is there's a whole missing part of the Anunnaki story, and how it revolves into the Native American Indian story is not been revealed to this planet yet. And like I told you, it all revolves around another incarnation of myself, was known as the Peacemaker. And what this is about is the Iroquois tribe of Indians is not one tribe. It's actually, originally it was 5 tribes, and now it's 6. And these tribes were at war for a very long time. And not only were they at war with each other, and, brother against brother, but they were internally at war within their own tribes and within their own minds. It's like darkness had set in, and it was ongoing for just like generation after generation, because it's kind of like their belief system. Like, if you killed my brother, I had to kill your brother. So they had the tribes were getting so decimated that one of the Mohawk warriors, whose name is Hiawatha. A lot of people know the name Hiawatha, but they don't really truly know the story behind it. Hiawatha had enough. He had lost 3 of his 4 children and his wife in these ongoing wars. And the problem was they were trying to make a union, and there was one chief who, I can tell you, in the story of the Peacemaker, is presented as a hideous male evil shaman who had snakes coming out of his hair. And truly that is a total flip of the script, because that's not, it was a female, and she's beautiful, and she was known as White Buffalo Calf Woman. And truly, you know, when you really understand the story of the Peacemaker, it was the Iroquois tribes who were at war with one another. She was just like, how about I see what you're about? I don't want no part of it, and you keep the hell away from me, you know? So what happened was Hiawatha united all the other tribes, and they went after her with the arrow. And as the story goes, they got their asses handed to them and whipped back with their tails between their legs. And when Hiawatha got back to his village, his last child had been slaughtered while he was away. It made him go mad with grief. So now flip over to the Canada side of the Huron tribe. There was a individual that was said to be born a holy person over there. From birth he was recognized. And when he was in his early adulthood, he said, you know, I know my brothers and sisters need me across the lake, and I'm going to be leaving. And he cut a hole in a sap tree in a maple and said, as long as this sap is clear, you'll know I'm still alive. If it runs red, you'll know that I didn't accomplish my mission and I won't be back. And so in the story of how the Iroquois was actually united, this Peacemaker character, I hate to call him a character, because if you go to any Iroquois, they'll tell you this is how, because right now they're united. They have the oldest functioning democracy on this planet still to this day. And this gets into what's happening in the near future. But so the Peacemaker crosses Lake Ontario from the Canada side, and just so happens that Hiawatha has went on a walkabout, mad with grief, and he walks to the shore of Lake Ontario, and the Peacemaker has crossed Lake Ontario in his magical stone white canoe. That's how the story goes. And when he reaches the shore, he somehow is able to show Hiawatha that we're not these bodies alone, and heals his heart and shows him that he'll be reunited with his family. And he tells them about this great law of peace, it was called. And Hiawatha was so blown away with what he learned about this Peacemaker and his great law of peace and how it calmed his own soul. He said, will you help unite the other tribes? So sure enough, he ends up it wasn't easy, because you imagine, after the first time they got their butts kicked, reunited again to go after this shaman again. But here's the deal, at this point, it was said that this evil male shaman with snakes coming out of his hair lived apart from his people and lived in no man's land. It was treacherous to even approach there, and lived in a land of swamps and alligators and snakes and spiders. And, well, right away in the Peacemaker story, I'm like, that ain't around the Great Lakes. Where the hell is that? You know, what you find out is that the actual Seneca Iroquois bloodline split, came to Florida, and became the Seminole. And the Erie Montauk, which is my father's side, interesting because you know who that is, and you know Eric and Robbie Robertson is also part of that same bloodline. And Robbie Robertson just released a new book called The Peacemaker, and in it is a brand new song called The Peacemaker. But so that's where the story stands. There's some really, you know, first of all, the chief who was not going along with the program was spun into an evil male, or truly it was a female, and then moved away from the people. It was never told where she moved. So now, fast forward to now, that's why I'm in Florida. history truly repeats itself. That the peacemaker went to this chief, and it was the purity of the song that made him, her, whatever you want to call it, come out and listen to what he had to say. That his song was so pure. I think frequency, right?
Yeah.
But as the story goes, she came out, and during him talking to her, and he had brought the other chiefs of the Iroquois, there was a total eclipse. There was a darkening of the sun. And as they were having this meeting, the sun disappeared from the sky. And that united everyone. And the peacemaker said, listen, we're not here to take you over. We know you've done some great things for your people. And that, matter of fact, you know, the Iroquois have what's called a longhouse, and there's a fire in the middle of it. 50 families would be under the same roof. And in the middle was a fire that was never allowed to go out. It said, you'll be put over in charge of our sacred fire and be granted eagle. Eagle status to a Native American Indian is kind of like obtaining Christ consciousness in our vernacular.
Yeah.
You know, the eagle is the only bird that flies above the storm and doesn't seek shelter below it. So now I'm going to tell you what I just found out, because I knew something was up anyhow between Florida and the East Lake area, which is home base for the mound builders, which is going to be revealed here soon. I'm busy working on that. By the way, I got a call because I tracked down the mound builders to my old hometown, as it worked out, of East Lake, Ohio. And that the oldest road in Ohio is called Lost Nation. Hello, ding, ding, ding. I never even thought about growing up what that meant, but when you can check this out for yourself. Just go to Google Maps, type in Lost Nation, Ohio. Take that road until it dead ends at Lake Erie. So you can either go left or right. If you go left, you're within 1 mile of the first mound builder site. It had walls that were 660 feet long, a large pyramid in the middle of it. But if you take a right, it's written in the actual street names of East Lake, Ohio, of what happened to the Lost Nation. The first road you come to is Tioga. What you find out is Tioga means entry place, peaceful valley in Iroquois language. Then the next road that you pass is Cherokee, and then it's Iroquois. And then the next street name is the only street name there that has 2 different tribes on one street. That if you go this way, it's Seminole. You go this way, it's Seneca. That's where that bloodline split, and the one chief went and lived apart from the people. It's never been said that it's Florida. But now, come full circle, right before I left from Florida, I got a call from Chief Yahweh, we'll call him. And he said, Michael, I know you're going into Florida, and I want to discuss why this is happening again. He said, the peacemaker went to Florida to bring I don't know if you know this, but Florida has fresh spring water aquifers all underneath of it. Yep. And he said the peacemaker went to bring fresh water to his mother in Florida, white buffalo calf liver. And he said that he traveled all the way to the bottom. He said, actually, you can only, can't go no further. You got to take exit 1, at the bottom of Florida to go to the spring. And he said he was taken there by a couple Iroquois elders. And he said what blew his mind is he was told this was the very first freshwater spring that Ea, the peacemaker, brought up from deep under the ground to bring fresh water to his mother. He said this is the fabled fountain of youth. He said all the water on the surface, scientists now are finding out that water has memory.
Yep.
And so imagine that you're bringing up water that is I don't want to use the word contaminated,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have any human thought forms attached to it. It's pure divine water from hundreds of feet below, from deep in the earth. And he said that this is the fabled fountain of youth. He said it almost had a holographic opening, like around the spring, that unless you were taken back there, you would not think that there was a path. All of a sudden, he said it was like, oh my God, there's more. He said what really blew his mind is they were only about 50 feet away from the ocean. And he just thought it was odd to have this fresh spring water, But big long story short there, that's a part of this peacemaker story and how it connects to the Anunnaki. Because, in the Anunnaki story, when you go back to Zechariah Sitchin and everything, it's pretty much everything holds up until the flood. Then all of a sudden, Inky just disappears. It's like, well, what the hell happened to Inky? Yeah. This is what people are going to find out, is to prove his brother wrong, that humanity was much more than just slave labor. He walked a mile in our moccasins, and so to speak, and I became human and lived physical incarnations. But here's the deal. I can tell you, when I met the Anunnaki in 2008, they had no idea who I was. It wasn't until they brought out this wand. It had like a purple diode at the end of it. Because what happened is, he said, we need to know what you know. We heard you've been filming us over Lake Erie. And he said, this won't hurt, but we're going to see what you know. And he took out this wand, and I could feel it stimulating my third eye. And from what I hear, they can go through your Akashic records and see exactly who you are. Yeah. That's when everything changed. And this person in front of me, instead of like, there was death threats and stuff coming out before, it was like he was definitely in his bad cop role. But for some reason, when he found out who I really was, he became very submissive. I thought it was like, well, there's a change of attitude, And he's like, well, there's going to be another celestial. He said, now that you're here, we've been waiting for you to surface. You don't know how it is that you're here. It's pretty much a miracle. But if it's okay with you, we'd like to have a council meeting. I was like, what the hell are you even talking about? A minute ago, your death threats are coming out against me and Boyd Bushman. By the way, you know who Boyd Bushman is, right? Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
And people said it was a Halloween doll or whatever. I can tell you that's bullshit. Because the reason this even started was me and David Sarita partnered on a documentary. And we were talking to John Hutchinson. John is a mad scientist, anti-gravity guy. Well, Lockheed Martin had been trying to get John to work for him, and he was friends with Boyd Bushman. So at the end of our production schedule, Boyd Bushman gave us an interview and showed us working anti-gravity, like principles behind it, everything. Spills beans, really. So when I met the Anunnaki, and they didn't know who I was yet, he's like, do you know anything about a young gentleman that went coast to coast and was talking about certain senior scientists, Boyd Bushman? And I said, yeah, I know everything about it. That's mine, David's movie. And so anyhow, they said, this guy that's in front of me, who turns out to be Anunnaki, said, I work for a group of people who decide what gets released to the public. And this Boyd Bushman information was not on the list. So how did this come to be? And I had to tell him the truth. I said, well, I willed it into manifestation. I think it's bullshit that, that this was being kept from mankind, and it's holding humanity back. And I am doing everything in my power to let the world know we're not alone. Because to me, that's the only chance we have in this world, is everyone take a big freaking time out to rethink everything you thought you knew, because evidently we were all, well, me and you aren't wrong, or our group of people, but most people are going to have a long, hard think of, wow, why didn't we see this? But anyhow,
well, do you think the government's going to come forward with this, or what do you think is going to happen? Is that your job?
I think, well, it is. That's because all of it has to, all the pieces have to be in place, because here's what I was going to tell you, is when you start to understand that, it's the Templars, right, who brought the bloodline, if you want to look at it that way. This gets so weird, too, because I am the least religious person that there is, but these things get so biblical. But the lost tribe of Israel, the Holy Grail bloodline, and I can tell you, they symbolize it by the floral de lis. That's their thing with it. That, how can I say this? With the Anunnaki, very long ago, at the last flood, 27,000 years ago, I don't know how much of the story to get into, but there was a experiment to make humanity evolve faster, because the Pleiadian side of the Anunnaki, because people don't know there's two different bloodlines going through the Anunnaki. There's, the king of that world, his name was Anu at this time period, and his partner was not Anunnaki, it was a Pleiadian queen. And their firstborn was myself, Ea. And, but later on down the timeline, he severed that relationship with my mother and took on an Anunnaki female, and they had another child who was Yahweh, Enlil. And due to Anunnaki succession of kingship, full blood got the chair over half blood. So the throne ended up going to him, and so 27,000 years ago, he had the throne. He didn't look favorably upon the experiment of mankind anyhow, and was okay of letting mankind perish. A lot of people will say they caused the flood. That's not so. Even in the Sumerian tablets, it said that the Anunnaki scientists realized the crust was going to slip. It's a natural occurrence, secular event. It'll happen again. It's happened many times in the past. But that doesn't equate to them creating it. They just realized it was going to happen, and Enlil said, well, must be God's will. I don't know what sounds they make anyhow. Let them perish. Well, that didn't sit well with me, and I went to my mother's side and said, isn't there anything can be done? And they said, well, the whole idea of the ark was brought up. And they said, well, in the Anunnaki telling of it, mankind was brought into their word in Sumeria was Eden. And well, that sounds familiar. And they said, truly, people want to say we were created as slave labor. They said it was more like pampered pets. There was no starving, there's starvation, there was no homeless. We were very well taken care of. But because of that, there was no catalyst for change. So when Inky went to his mother's side and said, isn't there anything that can be done? My race is going to let this beautiful race that I feel has so much potential just perish and not lift a finger. So they looked into it, and using the Pleiadian foresight of looking into the future, they did see that, mankind truly was not, we were pretty stagnant in our evolution because there was no catalyst for change. And so the Pleiadians said, well, if they're not going to have enough time to process their collective shadow work, each one of us has all like mental stuff that it hurts us growing up or whatever, and it gets put down into the unconscious. And that stuff needs to be processed. And when they said, what we don't understand is the Earth's magnetic field acts as like training wheels for human consciousness, meaning that when you take in the idea of thoughts create reality, there's a time lag between the thought and the manifestation of thought. And the bigger the magnetic field of the Earth, the more of a time lag there is. And between the thought and the manifestation of thought, there has to be an energetic handshake. Like they have to be, so in other words, say one day you go, that Joe's an idiot. I hope he dies. Then the next day you go, I think I mistook that. Joe's not such a bad guy. And then say in that time period it takes 2 days for the fucking manifest. When it comes time, you won't have a handshake, so it won't manifest. But as the Earth's magnetic field is declining more and more and more, your time lag between thought and manifestation is also closing. So you have less time to change your mind. If you get to this time period at the end of the cycle, when the Earth is at its lowest magnetics that it's ever been in the last 3,000 years, thoughts are being manifest almost instantaneously. So if you still have a lot of shadow work that hasn't been transmuted, because what we need to understand is thoughts have an electromagnetic reality, energy. And even our scientists will tell us that energy can't be created or destroyed. It needs to be transmuted. So if lower thought forms of fear and doubt and stuff have lower frequency, lower energy, how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, you live it, And then if you could choose love over fear, you'll transmute those energies. But what they see in the Pleiadians is mankind, if you evolve technologically but don't evolve spiritually, you'll just blow yourself up and self-implode. That's like 99 out of 100 endings to the story. We self-imploded. So they said, why go through all this trouble if they're just going to self-implode anyhow if we save them? So they went back and think tanked it, and they said, well, what if we made them experience their own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, unbiasedly? Whatever we put out, we'll get back magnifold, 10 times, whatever. So they said, well, that's really interesting. It's never really been done before, but theoretically, that would help us evolve faster and face our shadow side faster and transmute it, so it might work. So they said, since it looked like we wouldn't make it anyhow, this experiment was granted by the Pleiadians. And that's why I feel my mother, the Pleiadian queen, because they said the primate that they genetically tweaked was a Pleiadian soul carrier anyhow. Without Anunnaki coming here and genetically tweaking it, everything goes through these life phases. It didn't mean we wouldn't be evolved to be great light beings anyhow. But anyhow, so this experiment is put into place to make humanity experience its own mental energy in an accelerated fashion. But the Pleiadians said, since this has never been done, you can't just do that to an upcoming race. That you need to go and walk a mile in your moccasins, and if you can evolve, if you can incarnate into the human mass consciousness, and well, first of all, I want to back up. If you imagine that if you were this extraterrestrial race that had created this experiment to accelerate human conscious evolution, you probably want some kind of council that was looking to see how the experiment's going, to see how much transmutation is going, and that's where the council comes from, the 7 Lords of Light, 7 Lords of Darkness. And said that the 7 Lords of Darkness report back to Yahweh, almost like dangling carrots in front of people, see if they can get you to give your energy, your I am, your sovereignty away to illusionary outside sources. And if you do, you're screwed because, well, like I said, at this ceremony I was brought to, and there was a gentleman pulling 6 buffalo skulls behind himself. They were tied to each other like a train, and then these straps went into his back, and the flesh off of his back was just pulling. Because once they rip themselves free, that's when they're, I don't know what to call it. But as this guy, that's when they'll receive some kind of message, God or something. Yeah. They're told it's all bullshit, by the way. But as this gentleman is in front of me pulling these buffalo skulls, Yahweh looks at me and he says, Michael, there's a million ways to pull those buffalo skulls behind oneself. There's a million ways to give your energy away to outside sources. That's only one. And that was another really deep spiritual learning for me, because it really made me start looking into my life in ways I was giving my energy away to outside sources. Even the Dalai Lama, he said, don't let the behavior of others affect your own inner peace. Kind of like the same thing. Like, there's a million ways to give your energy away to illusionary outside sources. So at this point, the Pleiadian said, you have to incarnate and become human and have memory blocks, because you can't go in as you are and represent mankind before this council. That's the point, Become human yourself. Like I said, they didn't even know who I was until I let them use the voice on me. That's when it became clear to them that who I was. So that tells me, once we incarnate in here, no one knows who's who. No one gets a free ride. Everyone gets put through the machinery.
Yeah.
And so at this point, Inky's side, since there's a lot more to that story, it's actually a very fascinating story, because when he was told to remove the fish from the oceans by his brother, he didn't listen. And that's in their culture, you can lose your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Disobeying a direct order from the king. And instead, that's when he went to his mother's side and devised this whole plan to save humanity. And so, since he'd already went against his own race to help humanity, the idea of incarnating here to steer the experiment from under the radar, so to speak, was, we'll do that. What happened is they said that the Anunnaki first tried to incarnate into the Homo sapien meat suit. There wasn't enough cellular capacity level. There was not enough cellular capacitance to hold that level of energy, and that they would spontaneously combust, burst into flames. So then they had to rethink it again, but surprise, that's where the increase of creatine kinase comes there. That, like I said, your blood anomaly is an indicator of the Nephilim bloodline. It's what the Anunnaki told me. And specifically for that is to make an offshoot of the human genome that has more chi available. And just a pool of it. Just because you got more chi doesn't mean you know what to do with it. I sure didn't until recently, but it's there.
Yeah.
So that was the creation of the Nephilim anyhow, was for the Anunnaki to incarnate into this to try to help steer the experiment, but because they came in and truly earned the right to be human by becoming human, having memory blocks installed, not being able to access, any higher than any other normal human. If one person can do it, anyone can do it. And that's what happened at this ceremony as I was brought before this council. And it was tricky, really freaking tricky. They almost tricked me in, and I don't even know we wouldn't be in a good place right now. But matter of fact, I don't want to get into too much of what happened, but afterwards, once, it was actually a grandmother's